I showed you, and that's this area here. Now that's the Rockingham Industry Zone, and we're at the north-eastern corner of the Rockingham Industry Zone at the moment. We might give way to this very large truck coming at us. So now the Rockingham Industry Zone, as you'll see, looks quite, as we pass various parts of it, you'll see it looks empty, devoid of industrial development. And that's because it is at this stage, but that's soon to change quite dramatically. My understanding is that there's only about 4 or 5 20 hectare lots left. I think there's about 800 hectares in here. The land is owned by the state government. It's administered by Development WA, and they either lease the land if it's in the heavy industry half, which is the northern half, or they sell the land, which is general industry in the southern half. Now, as we go along here across, you can see that there's very little development going on, and that's like I said before. So most of the land in here is allocated, whether that is to being leased or sold. Now, if we look immediately to the left, we'll see that there's a brand new fence gone up. That is the site that's being cleared at the moment for Australia's second waste to energy plant. The first one we'll see a bit later on in the tour over towards the north. So we've got both of Australia's waste to energy plants. So that's where the material that you put in your garbage bin to go to the tip each week actually goes and is under high temperature combustion process is converted to electricity, which is, for me, I think is a terrific use of a waste product. Now I'm going to pull over here just for a minute and talk about what we have in front of us. It's a bit of traffic around. I just wanted to talk about Nickel West to you. So Nickel West is a company that is owned by BHP. It produces nickel for the international metals market. The really interesting thing about Nickel West is that it's doing very well now, and in the past it hasn't been doing so well for quite a long time. It's now producing a nickel sulfate product. Nickel sulfate is used in the manufacture of lithium batteries. In fact, there's more nickel in a lithium battery than there is lithium. Not many people know that. It's going to be producing, that plant's being commissioned at the moment. So that's really good news for Lithium Valley. Now, the Lithium Valley is a phrase that industry has coined for the metals and associated materials that companies that will be making those products for lithium battery cells. So this area, Rockingham Industry Zone, and you saw that there's a lot of bush in Rockingham Industry Zone, but a lot of new industry will be coming out of the ground over the next 18 months to 2.5 years. They're pretty much all in the lithium value chain space. Nickel West has got another 2 production trains of nickel sulfate under planning. The first one, which is about to be commissioned, or it's in commissioning, is producing 100,000 tonnes of nickel sulfate. Now, I think we'll keep going. I've caught up, and we'll just continue heading on down south. Okay, now we're heading down to the southern end of the Western Trade Coast, and over on the left, as we're passing, you'll see some roadworks, and in front of us, this is roadworks that are setting up for the opening up of the Rockingham Industry Zone. The land over on the right is where the 2 further nickel sulfate trains will be going. Talking about the lithium industries that are coming in here, and new energy industries as well. So I'll just list them off. There's a couple of high purity alumina companies. There's a manganese sulfate, a cobalt sulfate. There's a couple of graphite, and I think one graphene company. There's a company looking to come here that will be turning natural gas into gasoline. There's a company that's looking to produce liquid hydrogen for export, and that is using renewable energy to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. Over on this area here, we're talking to a company called Oswald that could well be coming here to set up a lithium battery cell manufacturing plant. And if it does, that'll be something like 30 hectares of factory under one roof, and with a solar array on the top. So fingers crossed we get that company embedded into this area over here. Now looking ahead, we see what's actually, oh, the lights have turned orange, so that's useful. So we see buildings, car yards, bulk goods warehousing, and so forth. So that is an ideal use, commercial use, for the periphery of the buffer zone. Why is that important? Well, it stops industry getting too close to the residential development that's on the other side, but it also stops the residential development from encroaching up towards closer and closer to industry. Now that's important because as residential area gets closer to industry, it constrains industry. Industry is less inclined to spend money redeveloping their site, and so forth. So what happens is that if we get a constraint on industry, we also get a diminishing of the development of industry. Now there is a buffer issue in the south part here. In Rockingham we are now, and there's been long-term plans to have some apartment buildings in what is currently zoned light industrial, have that rezoned to city centre, and that enables high-rise apartment buildings. Now that's, for us, for industry, that's a really bad thing. So we've been opposing that probably for about 8 years now. We're going to take, at the next intersection, we're going to take go west over towards the coast, but this land in front of us and on the east side is where these apartment buildings would go if this happened, when we obviously sincerely hope it doesn't happen. So we're going to head west now. The houses that are directly in front of us now are outside of the buffer zone. So the buffer zone finishes on this road. That parkland is inside the buffer, these houses are outside of the buffer. Now these houses currently are getting, in certain weather conditions, decibels, noise, a little bit higher than what the maximum allowable is. So it would be very silly to reduce the buffer or to bring these houses closer to industry, because the noise increases, and there's also cumulative risk around catastrophic release of certain chemicals, and these people could be affected if that were to occur. So buffer zones, if the message from this part of this tour is protect the buffer zones, then that's why we protect the buffer zones. Now straight ahead of us is the Stirling Naval Base. That's where the Navy ships are housed. There's a lot of contractors working on that site, but it's set to double in the next few years. So there's going to be a lot of Navy defence activity. I think there's some of that is with the American and British Navies as well. Now up ahead of us is a big blue building that you see. That's the grain terminal for CBH. It's the largest grain terminal in the southern hemisphere, by the way. Now these houses, as we're getting closer to industry, it's interesting that these houses are outside of the buffer zone, yet we're getting closer than we were before to industry. So there's some strange alignments of the buffer here. Over to the left we can see the CBH grain terminal. There's a ship being loaded with probably wheat destined for international markets. Now that's a very busy grain terminal, and as we pass the water here you'll see some black dots in the water. Those are the buoys for the mussel farm holding the ropes up. There's 3 mussel farms in Coburn Sound, and that means that Coburn Sound must be very good quality water, otherwise we couldn't eat the mussels out of there. The problem with the mussel farm, just out of interest, is that the guy who runs them is moving all of the mussel farming to Albany, because when the snapper are spawning in Coburn Sound now, there's so many that they are stripping. They can strip 10 tons of mussels off his ropes at night. Now we've got a good view of the CBH jetty. Now you see this alignment just here where the fences change. That's where the buffer changes. So there's no buffer at all for CBH. There doesn't seem to be any issues now, but there were noise issues going back quite a few years, but they've been resolved. Part of it was the hull, the hatches, big steel hatches on the ships being slammed down, different weather patterns. If you've got an inversion layer because of cloud, the noise can vibrate around. Now I do go faster here because there's a lot to say. Now directly ahead of us you see some bush. That it's not really bush, it's sort of regrowth. Well, there used to be a township there called Kwinana Beach, and I think it was in the 70s, mid-70s, that the government purchased all of the houses and raised them, flattened them, got rid of them, and so that's now land available for industry. And sometimes there's parts along here that you can actually see the driveway or the road network that passes. It's still visible to see from air. There's one just here. This is actually the original road network through the place. Now this has already been starting to be developed already, and there's more to come. Part of the Lithium Valley companies will be in here as well. Now we're coming up to a park. It's called Wells Park. We'll go in there and we'll take a look at what's down on the shore. Wells Park is a public park. Now industry doesn't like having public parks in an industrial area. It's not that we don't like the park, it's like it's about what we don't like the purpose of the park being, and that is a place for people to gather, families, and they come here to recreate, barbecues, fishing. There's a little boat launching ramp, nice facilities, but these people are in a dangerous place. So directly ahead of us you can see a couple of ships being loaded. There's dangerous chemicals that are loaded and unloaded, imported and exported from this jetty, and we can see lots of people around. There's some ships offshore, and I'll just park here and I'll give you the story. Okay, so